Namaste, everyone. I'm Jeni Ji, and thanks for tuning in. I'm your host and producer of Soul to Soul Connections with Jeni Ji, and I'm very grateful for each one of you who tune in and watch the episodes. Now, if you'd like to catch the episodes, you'll have to watch them on my podcast or YouTube. I'm on 16 different platforms and currently growing every day. So you'll be able to watch this interview regardless of one way or another. So today's show, I am beyond ecstatic. I'm so truly grateful and honored. He is one of my favorite people, and you're going to see why that is. Now, before I introduce Jay, I'm just going to read you a little bit of his bio, and then I'm going to ask him some questions, and you will be able to see who he is, for those of you who don't know. So now, Jai Uttal is a Grammy nominee kirtan artist, multi-instrumentalist, and elastic vocalist. He is considered a pioneer in the world's music community with his combined influences from India and American rock and jazz. Jai has been leading, teaching, and performing world music and kirtan, the ancient yoga of chanting or singing to God, around the world for close to 50 years, creating a safe environment for people to open their hearts and their voices. Jay grew up in New York City and lived in a home filled with music. Jay began studying classical piano at the age of 7 and later learned to play old-time banjo, harmonica, and guitar. At age 17, he heard Indian music for the first time, and 2 years later, moved to California and studied under the famous Sarod player Ali Akbar Khan. Jay later began taking regular pilgrimages to India, living among and wandering street musicians of Bengal, and singing with the kirtan wallas in the temple of his guru, Nam Niyam Karola Baba. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Jay has emerged as a leading influence in the Bhakti tradition. He considers Bhakti to be the core of his musical and spiritual life. Kirtan is the calling and crying and reaching across infinite space, digging into the heart's deepest well to touch and be touched by the divine presence. Now, I want to welcome my guest with the greatest honor. I just adore you, huge fan. I chant with your music every day, have for many, many lifetimes, I must say. Want to welcome Jai Uttal. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to chat with you today.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm so happy and honored to be here with you. Yeah, my guru is Neem Karoli Baba,
There you
just
go.
the pronunciation. And also my Indian friends call me Jay, but all the Westerners that I know, which is hundreds of thousands of people, call me Jai. So yeah, you can take your choice.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's news for
Yeah.
me. Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So now can you please share with our viewers, what is kirtan?
Kirtan is a singing chanting practice that evolved in ancient India. Uh, I think in parallel to chanting and group invocation practices in all the indigenous societies around the world. Um, in Indian kirtan, we sing in Sanskrit. We sing very simple mantras. Mantras are phrases or words that have the ability to transcend and transform the mind and the heart and the soul. And these words, these mantras, were gifts given to us by the ancient ancient men and women who lived their lives in complete harmony with the divine. So in kirtan, I find the most evocative melody that I can find, and the appropriate rhythm, and we sing call and response, where I'll sing the mantra and the group will sing the mantra back, and often I will evolve the melody within the same, shall we say, session, and sometimes it can be very quiet and very peaceful, and sometimes it can be very wild and very loud, and everyone dancing. And yet the repetition of the mantra uh, is consistent. And there's something about the word kirtan itself is related to, very loosely related to, what would be translated as praise.
Mhm.
Um, but I prefer actually invocation, and and the mood of kirtan as we sing can pass through like every feeling in the heart. It can we singing, we're singing and expressing the soul's longing, and sometimes that can be very, very anguished, and sometimes it can be completely joyful and celebratory. Um, and yet again, the repetition of the mantras is consistent. Usually kirtan is done in groups, but it's not always. I'd say every day, almost every day, I'll spend some time. Yeah, yeah, no, every day I'll spend some time singing kirtan just by myself. Sometimes my wife will join me, but it's beautiful solitary also. But there's something in a group, where all the energies of everybody start. What's that word?
The
In
frequency
trend.
changes. Yeah, the frequency changes,
Yeah.
I find right away, like right away. Even I chant every day, first thing in the morning and sometimes throughout the day when I'm driving where I can blast it, as I call it, then I'll sing. Then I don't care who's watching me.
Yeah. Yeah, that entrainment, that's the word I was thinking about. When a group is singing together, all the vibrations start to buzz in synchronicity and then raise together. It's really awesome. I feel so kind of lucky and blessed that I was given this practice and shown this practice. And also, as a musician, I'm able, for years and years and years, and currently, I'm always able to kind of find new musical settings in which to sing these mantras. So lately I've been doing a lot of reggae kirtan and some bossa nova kirtan, and so it doesn't always have to be within traditional Indian instruments and melodies.
Yeah.
But I don't mess with the mantras.
Yeah. No, no, those are so like very sacred, like very like even when I chant, like I chant with your music, I love it. It just really changes that frequency within, I find, and it really just opens, well, for me anyways, it just really opens me up to God in so many different ways. So many different ways. And it's so beautiful. How did you come across like this path? Like what made you like gravitate towards Kirtan?
Um, well, I started, feeling and wanting and studying to be a musician um, pretty young. I was a kid, and music, really fascinated me and drew me. And then the first music that really, I felt like sanctuary, believe it or not, was the banjo. Because I studied piano as a kid and for many, many years, and but I always like kind of hated it. It was it was like enforced
Mhm.
on me. But then I discovered the banjo and the strings. I hadn't played any stringed instrument, and the strings just resonated, and I found a sanctuary. I was not happy as a young person, but anyway, um, I first heard kirtan when I was in my early teens, I guess. I grew up in Manhattan and in New York, and I guess it was the early stages of the Hare Krishna movement. I didn't join them, but I heard them singing, and that was the first time I heard kirtan, and it was, oh wow, it was like enchanting. There was something about the repetition and the energy really touched me. But at the moment, then I certainly didn't feel like joining the group or following them. But then I became really drawn and fascinated to Indian classical music and to yoga. And this was, I was still like 17 or something like that. And I'm 72 now. So it was a long time ago. And so I began to study Indian classical music. And then I went to India and I met my guru, Neem Karoli Baba. And in his temples, which were very, at the time, very rustic and, in a small village, but there was kirtan chanting happening 24 hours a day. So and it was very beautiful. It was, the melodies and the voices were sublime. I mean, there's all kinds of kirtan, and it can be really rough. It can be, and and it all has its own beauty. But this was, something so touching, and that became the background music of this very, very, very transformative time spent with Neem Karoli Baba. And well, I had heard kirtan and I had sung kirtan a little bit prior to going to India. But then when I went to India, somehow or another, the singing of it, the practice of it, really connected to a deeper place. I mean, at that point, I was 19. And so I had been studying Indian music for a couple of years, and I had been exposed to kirtan for a couple of years, but it kind of gelled when I was in India. And then when I say gelled, I should say began to gel, because it's still, all 50, 60, whatever years later, it's still in the process of gelling, because it's always different, and the practice and what comes from the practice is always evolving. And gosh, I'm so thankful for that. If it was just static, what a bore that would be.
Yeah, I agree. What is a mantra? So for somebody that's like, well, what is a mantra?
A mantra is a word or a group of words that well, I'm speaking in the traditional sense, because nowadays many people will call affirmations mantras, or like self reminders can be mantras, and that's, in a sense, that's true and that's beautiful. But in the traditional sense of the word, mantra is a Sanskrit syllable or group of words that has the power to uh, uh, alter the course of your destiny, to uh, supplant the intellectual um, boss,
Yeah.
and and put the heart into the mind and the mind into the heart, and begin the process of transformation that we call spiritual growth. um, there's many kinds of mantras. It's a huge science. But in kirtan mantras, uh, the ones we sing are very simple and are generally names of God, names of goddess, names of spirit. Because kirtan is also a part of a yoga called Bhakti yoga, which, as opposed to other forms of yoga, it's specifically to strengthen and awaken the very personal connection with spirit. And that means, however one thinks of the divine, it's personal. So what could be more personal than the names? When you're talking to your beloved, if you don't know his or her name, it's kind of hard to communicate. So the mantras that we sing in kirtan are primarily, not 100%, but primarily names in Sanskrit.
Oh. So what's your definition of devotional love?
Of say it again, of
Of devotional love.
devotional love.
Yes.
Well,
That's a big word.
yeah, yeah. Um, it's funny, the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is my wife. She just it comes to my mind, and I think of our love, or I'll just speak personally. My love for her um, is deeper and um, more real than the waves of life.
Mm,
And and then I think of my son, my love for my son. I would give my life for him. Um, and then I think, it's not necessarily in this order. It's just like,
yeah.
and then I think of my guru, and I think of God, and I know that love has many, many, many colors. Love is not always happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes love has fear. Love certainly has attachment, and attachment can bring fear. Love engenders vulnerability, which is often a little scary, and love also contains anger. Love contains jealousy. Love contains every color in the heart. But the all of that rests in the vessel of complete connection and and knowledge, wanting, intention, that connection, particularly divine connection, but through people, that divine connection will always um, heal, and will always, I won't say rise above, but will always uh, immerse through whatever other difficult emotions might appear. That this connection, that this true and knowing connection, from the heart, not a mental, not an idea,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah.
feel, uh, um, is the essential element of it. It's a really hard question to answer. So,
I know
um,
that's why I'm like, that's a huge question. I mean, like, even that's why I named, you know, like my interviews and that soul to soul connections with Jenny G, because I mean, I'm very drawn to authenticity and authentic people. And, it's having that heart to heart, soul to soul connection with someone, and that can just take you everywhere. Like that, it's like eternal love and such. It's always, no matter if somebody's with us or have passed on, that's why I wanted to ask you, because that's a really big word. I mean, love
yeah,
is the power of
even
the world.
even just the word love, yeah, without the word devotional.
Yeah.
Um, you
Yeah.
know, when our when our kid was born, when our son was born, you fill out. There's all these forms you fill out, and they ask what's the religion, and so I'm Jewish, my wife is Catholic, and we're both a little Hindu, we're both a little Buddhist, um, uh, and even more than that. So in all those forms, we just wrote universal love.
Yeah.
That's the religion.
Yeah, because I mean, we never know who we're going to fall in love with. I mean, I can fall in love with so many different people just from their soul, just from their energy, and I'm like, wow, I love their energy. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean like I'm like in love with them, but it's just like I love that authenticity, that energy. It's just wow, that person's extraordinary, like they're amazing, and I always look at the goodness in people, because we all have that not so good, and the angel on one side and
Yeah,
the
right.
devil on the other, right? We all do. And if somebody
We're
says they don't,
complex.
I'd be like, really?
Yeah, human
Yeah.
beings are a very complex species.
Oh, I know. I'm like, why did I come back as a human, right? At times. So
Yeah,
you of
but we
course,
but we say go ahead,
what's
go ahead.
that?
No,
What's that?
we were talking at the same time. So you go ahead.
Oh, oh. I just wing it. So now, of course, you have been to India like so many times. Can you share? I mean, I'm sure there's like hundreds of stories, but can you share like a story, like a sacred story of one of your experiences in India? Like, that's the thing. I'm sure there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's so many of them.
Yeah,
I'll share one that that's well, it's just a little different because it also involves my family, my wife, and my son. Um, when my so my son Ezra is 18 now,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he just went to college, which is wow, it's a big deal. But that's another story. Anyway, when he was I think three and a half, it was the first we for the first time went to India as a family together, and we were in this town called Rishikesh, which is
Mm,
a holy pilgrimage place at the foothills of the Himalayas. It's actually in the Himalayas, but it's in a valley. So, and the Ganges River runs right through it, and that Ganges is considered a very sacred goddess river. And we all hear about how dirty the Ganges is, but it's not. But when it comes out of the mountains in Rishikesh, it's pristine, pristine, clean. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. However, like most of India, there are many, many homeless people and uh, beggars. So what we would often do would be buy a big bag of fruit, and then around sunset time go just walk about and distribute food to, to,
mm,
to hungry people. And so, in India, also, not in the cities, but in the villages, there's also a lot of cows walking
yeah,
around because the cows
yeah.
cows are considered sacred beings and they're taken care of. So one evening in Rishikesh, the sun was setting over the Ganges River, and all these temple bells were ringing. It was really, like a mystical moment, and my wife Nubia is holding Ezra in her hand, and just a little ways off from me, and I'm giving all these oranges to like. It felt like hundreds of people. It wasn't hundreds of people, but it was, a lot of beggars. And then there was all these cows were coming close to me, but I was avoiding them. And so my son, from a distance, says, and I don't know where he got this from, but he said, "Don't forget to feed the cows, Jai Gopal." Or Jai Uttal. That's what he said.
So,
Don't forget to feed the cows, Jai Uttal. And and so I started giving oranges to the cows as well. Now in a way that sounds like a silly story, but it was a
no,
very like mystical moment,
yeah.
and also it was a moment where I felt like my son was showing his past life a little bit.
Oh, yes.
And but there's so many stories, Jenny. I don't even know
Yeah,
where
I
to start.
know. I know,
Tell you
right?
another one. Here's another one. And this was my first trip to India, and I was 19, and I was with my guru, Neem Karoli Baba. And Neem Karoli Baba, we called him Maharaji. Still call him Maharaji. And Maharaji translates as great king. But it's a word used in India, like the chaiwala, the guy who sells beautiful, nice tea under a tent in the corner. If you like his particular style of tea, you say, "I'd like to get a cup of chai, Maharaj." You call him great king. So it's not necessarily. Uh, it's a word used with love and respect, but to anyone who's really cool. um, so anyway, Maharaji was a guru who, he never gave discourses, he never gave lectures. It was just his being was transformational. So anyway, one day, um, it's a traditional form of respect. When you see an elder or a guru, you bring them either flowers or fruit. And so what usually would happen was that people would bring Maharaji fruit, and then he would just distribute it. He would throw it around to people. Sometimes it was kind of funny, and sometimes he would just give it away. So one day I was on my way to the temple, and I passed a fruit market, and they were selling these beautiful berries. They looked like blackberries. They looked in the shape of blackberries, but they were a light green color. I'd never seen them before. So I bought them from Maharaji, and the funniest thing happened. I was in my room washing them, and I put them in the bag, and the bag broke and they scattered on the floor. So I picked them up and I washed them individually, and then I washed a cloth. I put a lot of
Yeah.
attention into it, where normally I would get some fruit and bring it. So I brought it, and he spread the berries around in front of him. He sat in a little wooden table and on a woolen blanket. And he spread the berries, and he started saying in English berries, and he started eating them and eating them and eating them. And then he started hitting me on the head and hitting me on the head. And I felt um, like really altered state. And then he gave me a banana and told me to go. So I walked out of the ashram there, and it's just on a dirt path, right? And I'm walking back to the guest house where we're staying. And next door to Maharaji's property was this property of another old sadhu who, you know, basically just sat around in a what do you call those? Just a chair, a loungy chair. He'd sit around and had long dreadlocks, and he had a pet elephant. And
Oh,
so
wow. Yeah.
so separating his ashram from the dirt path was just a little fence, maybe up to my knees. So the elephant came up to the fence and started looking at me, and then looking very longingly at my banana. Uh, so I gave my banana to the elephant, and the elephant stood up on its hind legs, crossed its front um, legs just like across from each other, tilted his body in like a dance pose, and put out his trunk. And basically, he stood there like Krishna playing his flute. And I felt like I had this vision of Krishna via the elephant, and I was totally tripped out. And I continued on my way, and I realized that in India, not so much now, but in 1971 or 1970, the veil, the, you
Yeah.
know, bet between the dimensions was much, much thinner. And often you could see through the veil in a way that most of us, me included, in our modern life, we don't see through the veil. And that was one of those moments. And I don't know if it translates, but it was really
I get
amazing.
it. Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. And I mean, it's these little experiences that we have that can really, transcend us in so many different ways. Anything. And that's why, like, when people share, like meaningful moments for them, because we each have our own moment of something sacred. So I love that. I love elephants. I love elephants and have my Ganesh and such, of course, right? Big, huge statues in here. So so now
Can you imagine
you're
having a,
what's that?
can you imagine having a pet elephant?
Oh, I would love it. I actually I mean I'm also an animal communicator and I love animals. And whenever I go um out, especially to the zoo, let's say, I communicate all day long, and I hold it very sacred. Like it's very sacred. And I had a communication with an elephant actually after my wolfhound had passed many years ago. And I was sitting there in tears, and I was in Hawaii actually at the Honolulu Zoo at that time. And I went
Uh-huh.
there on my wolfhound's birthday, and my Irish wolfhound's birthday. And the elephant came over to me, like he was way in the distance, and I kind of locked eyes, and he came over to me, and he's like, don't be sad, and he gave me this really, really profound message that, like, I'll never forget. Like, I'll never forget. And I did a story of him. So of course,
Mm.
not everyone is going to understand it, of course, right? So yeah, I elephants for me are like very sacred, very, all animals are, mind you, but I
You know,
love it.
let me tell you something that happened that I still can barely believe happened. And this was right after I'd come back to the US from that first trip to India. And I was still, the energy of India and the energy of being with my guru was really with me very strong. And a friend of mine and my friend had a VW van, and we decided to go on a little road trip. And um, our little road trip took us to Mount Tamalpais, which is a mountain, it's a sacred mountain just near us in the Bay Area. And you're not supposed to camp there, but we managed to find a little place to camp. No tents or anything, but just sleeping bags. So in the middle of the night, I felt this kind of nuzzling in my chest, and I woke up, and a deer, a doe, I guess, was nuzzling me and wanted me to pat her.
Hmm.
So I started patting her, and she was nuzzling, and there was another deer, just keeping its distance a little bit, but kind of right in the vicinity, and perhaps it only lasted a minute, but it was like a lifetime,
Yeah,
and. And it was just unbelievable, and I felt so there was so much love. It
yeah.
was like, how did that happen? I don't to this day I don't know how that happened, but it was so deep. It was amazing.
And there's that love word again, right? Again. So,
Yeah.
it's unconditional love. And I mean, animals can feel our vibration. So they're all messengers, like all messengers.
And I
So
was sound asleep.
yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
something.
I know it's so so amazing. I could actually write a book on all my experiences with animals and such, and it's all very sacred, every presence and such like that. So now you were a Grammy nominee for like for what song or album was it, Jai?
It was my album Mondo Rama,
Mm.
and which Rama is one of is like my favorite mantra, I guess you could say, and very very literally, or in its most simple meaning, it just means God. You could take that word and talk about it for many many hours, but it means God, and it's the mantra that I recite. It's the mantra that my guru gave me, and I've been it's kind of been one of my internal pillars
Yeah,
for since 1971. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a long time. And then Mondo means world. So I named this album Mondo Rama, feeling okay. The world is Rama. The world is God. So the album, it's got a lot of different elements, but it's mostly kirtan songs. But I think there's two songs on it. Um, and it was coming from a very difficult period in my life. I should say a cusp between an extremely difficult period and an extremely beautiful period. And the difficult period was I was actively addicted to drugs and alcohol. I was in a relationship that was just not right, in many many ways. And the cusp was uh, the other side of the cusp was I got clean and sober, so decades ago, and then met my wife Nubia. So yeah, so there's a lot of emotions on this album. Some of them are very, sad, just plain sad, and some of them are just so ecstatic. I don't know that it's my favorite of my albums. I really couldn't say that, but it was really far out to get the Grammy nomination. And Nubia and I were going to go to the Grammys, but I got pneumonia, and
Oh,
my I've always had my life. I've had lung issues, and it just hit. But so it was disappointing. But then I thought, well, maybe I was being protected because
yeah, yeah,
the Grammys are quite a. From what I hear, I've never been, but from
yeah,
close people into the ceremonies, wow, there's a lot going on, and yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
We were disappointed and also relieved.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes at the Grammys, of course, and so on and so on. So, I mean, I believe that things happen for a reason. So, yeah, if you were truly, truly meant to be there, present, you would be. So, with you,
Yeah,
healing and working through many different things and such, you know, that's why I believe God has a way to kind of hold us back. It's like delays are for reasons and such like that
yeah,
too, right?
you
So, I
have
mean, I
some
love,
great outfits.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, right? So now you've played with many musicians. Is there like one musician that you really like enjoyed playing with more, let's say? Like who was that?
Well,
Why? Yeah, because there's so many you've played with. Yeah.
I've played with. I think every musician. Well, I won't say every, but so many of the musicians that I played with through my life have all been super inspiring to me and lovely people. Somehow or another, God just brings the sweetest and most passionate and talented people into my orbit. I'm really grateful about that. But if there's one musician that I have enjoyed playing with more than anyone, I would have to say my son.
Oh, okay.
And my son is in my band. Now he's living in Los Angeles, so we might not be in all my gigs, but he's been in my band for a couple of years, and but also at home, we for years we've jammed and played together and talked about music together and improvised, and he plays piano, and I play stringed instruments mostly now, with him mostly guitar and singing, of course. So yeah, so I don't think that a father has a happier moment, a father who's a musician, that is, has a happier moment than when his son becomes part of his band.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing because then it goes on even after you're long gone. His music will take him, and I'm sure he'll do something connected with your music, with his energy all into one. That's what I'm seeing anyways, right?
yeah.
But I love that.
He's in music college now. We did a
Oh, wow,
gratitude,
okay. Yeah.
an online gratitude concert before he went away, and we called it Uttal and Uttal.
Hmm.
Jai Uttal and Ezra Uttal. So we just called it Uttal and Uttal um, um,
Yeah.
gratitude concert.
Wow. I love it. Like that's like it stands out, you know?
Yeah.
So out of everything in the world, right, which we won't even go on about, but if you could change one thing, like if you had the powers, abracadabra, whatever, to change one thing in the world, what would it be and why?
Well, I guess if I could change one thing in the world, well, there's so many things,
Yeah, I
Jenny,
know, right?
but so it depends on what time of day you ask me that question.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I would say world hunger. If I could change world hunger, and somehow by snapping my finger know that everyone has enough food to eat every day, that the anxiety of hunger, and but the emotional anxiety plus the physical devastation of hunger, if that could be eradicated, that would be the first thing I would change.
Yeah, very true. Very true. If you could meet one person in the world that's passed on or currently alive, who would that be?
Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan.
Uh, Bob Dylan, I just love him so much. I know meeting him, even if I met him, from what people say, he's very reticent to like open up and have a conversation. But if I could have an open conversation and hang out with Bob Dylan, that would be my person.
Yeah, we all have our person.
I think I should say, okay, it would be my guru who died in 73, or I should say it would be like Jesus or something. But no, it's Bob Dylan.
Well, yeah, right. That's the physical, right, to the spiritual. So we all have our person. Like we all have our person. Like when, I had somebody ask me that years ago and I'm like, wow. And then I told them who it was and they're shocked. They're like, what? And it wasn't no Jesus or God or anything like that either. Right. So I mean you're you. So okay, so now on our malas, of course, right? Mala beads. People have said like what does 108 mean, like when somebody's chanting and like what does 108 rams mean, like what's the definition of 108?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
I know.
I've I that I can't really answer. I have an article on it that I keep in my files, written by a yoga scholar named Georg Fornstein, who's passed away, and he went deeply into it about how in terms of astronomy and the distance between here and the moon and the distance between the moon and other planets. It's so deep and so scientific and so kind of mind blowing, but I could never contain it. Um, so I just sort of, uh, my beads are 108. Uh, the rosary in Catholic tradition is
Hmm.
108. The mala beads in Islam are 99, I believe, so that's a little different. But the japa beads, the mala beads in Tibetan Buddhism are all 108. Um, I can't answer that with knowledge.
Yeah.
Refer listeners and watchers to probably you can Google 108 by Georg Fjornstein
Yeah.
and read it. It's very interesting, but it's very scientific and very kind of, his brain is bigger than mine.
So now you also have a new album coming out.
Yeah,
Can you
it came
share?
out.
Yes, yes,
Yes, it came
definitely.
out. Let me show you the album cover,
Okay.
because I think, you know, well, pictures are like, what do they say? A picture is better than 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Um, and the back cover has a picture of me. Well, I'm walking on the beach, but it kind of looks like I'm walking on the moon.
Yeah, it does
Um,
actually. It has that vibe, which is
yeah,
perfect because when you look at the reality, moon is universal and you're very universal.
and the moon is, connected to the emotions and the feminine. Anyway, the album is called Dust and Tears. The and is that little symbol. It, and it's different. It's a little different from my other albums in that it's mostly in English, and the lyrics were written by myself and my wife, and each song was based on a song from medieval India, by the sacred Bhakti songwriters. We didn't, take a whole song and sing it, but we found lines from the different mystics that would kind of stimulate then our own writing. Two of the songs are based on Psalms from the Old Testament, and one of them is the 91st Psalm, which is accredited to Moses, which is so that's really ancient lyrics, and I just love it so much. Music, I feel, is really inventive. I mean, I always try to make the music inventive. It's reggae oriented, but it's not reggae.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a few of the songs have mantra choruses, but mostly not. And it's very devotional. Um, in some ways the songs are very heartbreaking, or heart-wrenching, I should say, because the devotional songwriters of the ancient times, they sang celebration and they sang the anguish of separation, almost simultaneously. Um, and well, we do have albums and we do have CDs that if anybody writes to me, we can work out sending them. They're not available anywhere else other than through me. Um, but of course, they're on all the streaming platforms.
Oh, yeah. So what do you want to be remembered for? Like, what do you want people to remember you as when that time eventually comes? So you passed away this second, let's say.
Uh, well, a couple of things. I want to be remembered as a very, put it this way. I hope to be remembered as a very, very kind, caring person. And I would like all the music that I have created in my life, a lot of music. I I I would hope that would continue to soothe and help people in their inner journeys and in their healing journeys. And I hope that in his own way, my son will continue that legacy with music. And I hope and pray for the continued safety of my wife and my son. Assuming I died first, and then, as I said before, I hope and pray for world peace and the end of hunger. But that's, it's not in my hands, of course. So I just hope that the music, I'm never not a superstar, never going to be a superstar or anything like that. But I just hope that the music continues to help people in their lives.
I mean, it makes me feel grounded. Like that's why every day I start off my day and I chant. It gets me grounded. Or if I'm feeling off, let's say, if I happen to catch the news, let's say for a minute, I turn it off and then I'm like, just start chanting, clear it all out right away. Right. So, I mean, I encourage anybody who hasn't heard your music to listen to your music. It really can make a huge difference. Like it really can. What was one of your biggest life lessons? Like, I mean, there we all have our lessons, of course, right? What was your biggest lesson, do you feel?
Wow,
I know
biggest
there's
life
so many,
lesson.
right? Like, yeah, like,
Well, I'll say this, but again, it's a question that if you ask me any hour in the day, I might
yeah,
have a different
exactly.
answer. But in this moment, I guess I'll say one of the biggest lessons was learning that I could be a sensitive, feeling, emotive person and be sober. Because prior to that, uh, I felt that I needed to have this wall surround me because I felt everything so deeply. Um, and then, you know, getting sober, certainly was a process, but slowly realizing that I could
Yeah,
exist in this world and share my heart and feel other people's love as well as other people's suffering and not have to run away.
yeah,
That was a big lesson.
yeah, yeah. And that's again why the Grammy situation, that's exactly what I meant. Like God pulled you away from that for a reason. They're like,
Yeah, I
no,
was
you know
newly
what?
sober.
Yeah, we have a bigger purpose
Yeah,
for you. We're not putting you there. We'll put your energy there for the Grammy nominee, but we're not physically putting you there, right?
yeah,
So that's why I personally surrender everything regardless of what. It's like, okay, I surrender it. I don't force or push anything. I go with the flow, and allow things to happen as is and keep working towards my goals and such like that. So that was so beautiful, Jay. Like I'm so very grateful for you spending time. and chatting with me today. I know you're busy and such like that. So if you had like any, like if somebody was really struggling, let's say, in life or addiction, let's say, or um, whatever it is, that they're struggling, because we all have struggles, of course, we always will, as far as I'm concerned. So what would you say to that person if somebody says, Jay, I'm stuck, what do I do, or how do I handle this situation?
Well, back to the addiction thing. One of the big lessons I learned in while I was in the treatment facility was, I never wanted to ask for help. I mean, I was always asking God for help, right? But I would never ask another human being for help. It was too scary to put myself in that situation. And then in the treatment facility, I realized that, well, everybody is asking for help. We're all needing help, and we're all like community is so important, and being vulnerable within our community, sometimes scary, but it is so important. So I would, if there was that one thing to somebody who was struggling with addictions, I would say reach out to someone who's been through it, or who is currently going through it also. Ask them for help, and then at the same time as you're asking for help, you might not be thinking it, but even the asking is sort of offering help, because it helps others to help. You know what I mean? Um, so I guess
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest. Find someone who has been through this, and this could be anything from heartbreak to
Yeah.
cancer to addiction, who has been through it or is going through it, and just talk.
Yeah.
Well, not even have to frame it as I need help, but just
Mhm.
talk. And
Yeah.
this is what I'm going through. It's really hard. Um,
Mhm.
did you feel this also? And the person more than likely will say, yeah, I had that experience too. It's not easy, but it passes.
Yeah. It's just connecting with that person. Because, I mean, life is so fragile as it is. I mean, I used to work on and off call at the hospices for years and years and years until, recently, quite recently. And, you see just how fragile life is, and, the families, and of course the patient, and what people are dealing with, and, anything really, like any little thing. So,
Yeah.
it's,
I mean,
it's,
at 72, I'm this, so many people that I know are, well, they're not, I won't say dying, but having very, issues like in life.
yeah,
The fragility of human life you become even more aware of it as you get older. And at the same time as it can be scary, it also engenders more and more compassion for others as well as for yourself. Because, and it's not just older people. The reality is that we're
anybody. Yeah,
all going through it. And we have days where we feel really strong, and we have days when we feel really lost. And we still, regardless, we still need to be present for
ab-
ourselves and for others.
absolutely. Or they can sign up for
You
your classes.
know, well, my website is, I know you're going to have it written, but it's www, that's everybody. Then Jai, Jai, which is Jai, and Uttal, which is Uttal, jaiuttal.com. It's, easy. I'm easy to find. We have kirtan camps in person, and both and online versions as well, and then lots of concerts and lots of things.
Do you
And
have
my
any
wife
concerts
also,
coming up? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
yeah. Well, for those of us in the Bay Area, I have one uh, Saturday, and it's a small event. It's at a local yoga studio in
Nice.
Fairfax, California. The studio is called Padma Studio, and it's at 7 o'clock. Since the pandemic, one pandemic was rough for everybody, me included. But one of the great things about it for me was I realized that I was so much better without air travel and travel. And I'd been feeling that for a long time, but I didn't know how to change it, you know. And the pandemic changed it. So I'm still doing some travel. It's not like
Yeah.
I will ever cut it completely.
Yeah.
I mean, for work. But but
Yeah.
but as a result of not doing that much, I've been doing a lot more small local things, which I got to tell you the truth, I love them. You know, there's not it's not bright lights and glamour, but it's community. Anyway, so that's coming up just the day after tomorrow. And then let's see, I'm playing at a festival in Southern California called Bhakti Love
Oh, yes.
uh,
Yes. Yeah.
on October 14th. And then big trip coming. My wife and I are going to London, and I'll be doing a bunch of concerts, and she'll be doing a bunch of workshops. And then this is just off my head. I don't remember everything, but in November, there also for Bay Area, there's a like my favorite venue, concert venue, is in Berkeley, California, and it's called Freight and Salvage. It's about a 450 seat, um, just lovely place to perform. And so on November 26th, I'll be playing there with a full band. We're gonna have a big horn section, two trombones, saxophone, and silver flute, and it's all gonna be arranged very beautifully. Yeah, so there's always stuff going on. I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
Um, one of one of but I am very committed to not doing much air travel, and that's both for the environment, but it's also for my nervous system, my own internal ecosystem. Um, that's not a great decision for career, but it's a great decision for
Yeah.
personal health.
Yeah. Yeah. You always have to do what's best for you. I mean, even next week when I'm leaving, that's the first time I've flown anywhere since 2019,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, I've got a few trips since
Yeah.
since 2020. Oh my God, I remember, March 8th, 2020, I did a gig in LA, and that was a week before the full
Yeah.
lockdown. It, I was so anxious, at that point, I mean, COVID is still here and real, but at that point, like everyone was dying. It was so scary. But and then after that, it was 3 years before I traveled again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, like, for me, it just, I mean, even with the whole COVID thing, it really gave me that time to reflect within, and I started everything that I had put on hold. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start taking certain things online. So, I mean, I took like a photography. I do photography on the side as one of my meditation, and it's one of my passions. And I'm like, I'm going to, like, spirit send me to the right place, and like seconds, well, like right away, pretty much. I was online and I saw this and I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and it was like on sale, like 80%. And I'm like, oh, that's it, and then, and I was really drawn to him. And then I'm like, as I read into his energy, I'm like, okay, I know who he was in my past life. And I took the photography class and passed it. And I'm like, wow, check mark off one of my things on my vision board I had. And it's utilizing the positive from the negative, because we all have those traumas and challenges and such. And I always like, okay, what did I learn from that? What did I truly learn from that? And how can I utilize that wisdom and courage to help somebody else, to help them trans forward? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
As soon as the lockdown came, I started doing every Friday night free concerts, online
oh,
concerts,
wow.
and
Yes, yes.
and then and it wasn't for money, it was for
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
And then we translated our kirtan camps, which we've been doing for 20 years, into an online format. But also on the other side, just like when you said you started studying photography, I immediately got into this online banjo course, and
Oh, yeah.
and kind of and like re-energized my banjo playing because I love it so much, but I don't really do it professionally, so it was a bit on the back burner. So I dove
Yeah.
back into. It was so much fun.
But I mean, like whenever you follow your passion, it really opens up new doors for your soul's destiny. I mean, even with me, my photography, I'm not no pro by any means, and there is this one photo that I'm like, oh, I don't know, because I have a Instagram account on my photography separately. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to post that. I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe somebody might like it, right? So I put it up and Nat Geographic of all, like they liked it. I'm like, what? Really?
Oh,
That
that's so
that
cool.
photo? That's the one that really? I was shocked. Right? I'm like, really? So yeah, yeah. And it was
Yeah,
actually I took that photo when I was away on an assignment, right? And I'm like, really? I'm
that,
shocked. Yeah.
I have before we close, I gotta tell you a similar thing. All my albums, I worked very hard on the production and on the arrangements, the orchestrations from the beginning. But so once one winter, gosh, 20 years ago, maybe we were doing our kirtan camp in Guatemala at Lake Atitlan. And what I started doing was sometime during the afternoon, having everybody lie down comfortable, and I would just sing a lullaby. So, okay, I would make them up in the spot and never think twice about it. Uh, Several years later, a friend who was at the camp said, "Oh, I just found in my files. I recorded this on my little Zoom recorder, the little digital stereo recorder. And it's pretty nice, and I sent it to you." So he sent me this track. It was about, I think, 5 minutes long, and I listened to it, and it was like really beautiful. And so my friend Ben and I, we mastered it. We didn't do really change it. We just added a little reverb, just a little bit, and put it on an album. And it's my most streamed song on Spotify by like a mile. And that's so funny, because it was
Mhm.
like it was completely spontaneous.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it, and I didn't even know it was recorded. And
Yeah.
there, and now it's like millions of streams.
Yes.
I don't even know how to understand that.
I know, right? It's like sometimes that's the things. It's like sometimes some of the most difficult things, even that we're like, oh God, I'm glad that's over with. That can be the most rewarding. I don't know how many times that's happened to me, right? And I'm like, oh, that was a disaster, right? Or oh my God. And then something amazing happens from it. And I'm like, really? And then I'm like, wow, okay. That's why I surrender everything too, like no matter what it is, because you don't know, right? And yeah.
You just don't know. You just don't know. It's it's a mystery.
Yeah, yeah, the mysteries of life.
Yeah.
That's why it's like the universal mysteries of life. Surrender it, and okay. It's like whenever I travel, right? When I especially used to travel. Long story short, when I was over in Ireland, I was lost and I had booked for a tour and I'm like, oh my God, I got 10 minutes to get on my bus. I'm lost. I don't know where it is. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh God, please give me a sign. Like what do I do? And I looked up and right in front of me there is this church, right? So I run into the church, right? And I'm like, is there anybody in here? And so yeah, I found somebody and he goes, oh, it's just right over there. It's like I gotta throw a rock at it, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's
yeah,
awesome.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you, Jai. I'm like, I know you're
I
busy
want to thank you too.
and I'm so glad we connected, and like even like when we connected for the interview, it was I was gonna let you know and it just kind of I got distracted by it, but I really felt Shutri Ram just come right in. Like he always spoke highly of you. And
Yeah, we're good friends. Really good
oh,
friends.
oh, yeah, yeah, right. So I didn't really want to talk about him because I'd start crying. Every time I do, I'm just like, oh my God. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I really felt that strongly. And it's just amazing how things come together and happen and people out of past or current and such like that. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so, so much. It's really, really nice just to meet you and connect with you and
Yeah.
share with your viewers and your audience. And I hope that we meet in person one of these days.
Oh, you never know. Like, that's the thing, right? Like Bhakti, the festivals and stuff, that's on my list. And I'm like, Spirit, I'm going to be there at the right timing and everything like that, right? Divine timing, I surrender everything. So, absolutely. And you never know, maybe we'll come back another time and do a live show and such like that. So, even the viewers out there, write some comments. Let me know if you'd love to see Jai come back. We can do a live interview. There's so much more we could have even shared and talked about. And I'd highly recommend, anybody to check out your website, even people who are struggling seriously, listen to Jay's music. Like it really, that's how it even for me, anytime I'm kind of feeling a little off or whatever, the minute I start listening to your music, it just right away, it just takes me to a whole different vibrational frequency and opens me up, and all of this monkey mind thoughts, as I call it, it disappears. So, and even people taking your classes and such like that, it will really transform them in a beautiful way. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not. So yes. So again, I thank you so much for taking the time. And on everyone, like I'm saying, make some comments, like the video, podcast, share it. You can find Jay online. His music is outstanding, his classes and such. And it's on my list to take one of your classes as well. I love it all. So namaste, Jay.
Namaste, Jenny.